Llantrisant Castle, yes, this is it. This piece of tower and a few fragments of walls are all that remain. Perhaps that's not surprising, as so many people have tried to destroy it over the years. That and recycling, yes, recycling, have nearly finished it off.
Although there's not much to see here now, this castle has a very interesting story. It's connected with some well-known names in Welsh history, and in particular with one person who seems to have been hated by just about everyone, except the king.
But who built this castle? Some kind of fortification may have been made by Gwrgan ap Ithel, a lord of Glamorgan in pre-Norman times. Or was it the later work of Robert, the Norman Earl of Gloucester? Perhaps both had a hand in it. It was strengthened in 1246 by Richard de Clare, Earl of Gloucester. He made the castle an administrative centre for the lordship of Morgannwg, or Glamorgan. During his time living here, the castle was raided by the supporters of Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, or Llywelyn the last prince of an independent Wales. We can't tell what the castle looked like, but it was on a strategic hilltop location and was important, situated between the pacified south and the troublesome lands to the north. In 1294 it was attacked during the revolt by Madog ap Llywelyn, seen here in this effigy. This revolt was in response to the harsh rule and high taxes of King Edward I, the stern and ruthless Edward Longshanks. During this rebellion, it's known that the castle was very badly damaged, and perhaps even destroyed. It was repaired or rebuilt, only to face more trouble within a few years. During the reign of King Edward II, a harsh new administrator was appointed for Morgannwg. The appropriately named Payne de Turberville of Coity, the Sheriff of Glamorgan, inflicted the pain of very high taxes on local people.
Llywelyn ap Gruffydd ap Rhys, or Llywelyn Bren as he's better known, appealed to the king on behalf of the people for fairer treatment. What he got in response was a threat against his own life, so Llywelyn started a revolt.
Llywelyn failed to capture Caerphilly Castle, but took Llantrisant. It's said that the garrison was killed. The damage to the building was significant too. But Llywelyn Bren's revolt was unsuccessful and he was captured. More about him in a moment. The castle was long the property of the de Clare dynasty, a prominent Anglo-Norman nobility and the lords of Glamorgan. The lineage included Gilbert de Clare, 7th Earl of Gloucester, who was also known as the Red Earl, either because of his red hair or his very fiery temper. After Gilbert's son, also Gilbert, was killed in Scotland at the Battle of Bannockburn, leaving no children, his sisters became co-heiresses to the Gloucester earldom, including this castle.
In 1317, Hugh le Despenser the younger married Eleanor de Clare, sister of the dead Gilbert. Hugh had struck the jackpot. He'd been a landless knight, but now he was Lord of Glamorgan, and that gave him much land, a lot of wealth, and a great deal of influence with the king. But had there been popularity contests in the 14th century, Hugh would not have won any. Everyone else seems to have hated him. And it does appear that Hugh was rather a nasty piece of work.
But Hugh seems to have been loved by the king. He had the power to do more or less as he pleased. So when eventually the captured Llywelyn Bren fell into Hugh's custody, he had him brutally killed by hanging, drawing and quartering in Cardiff Castle. This unlawful action angered many nobles, and Hugh was already hated quite enough. Some enemies even employed a sorcerer, John of Nottingham, to kill the king and Despenser by sticking pins in their wax effigies. Yes, a kind of medieval voodoo. Hugh was so worried that he asked the Pope for protection from such witchcraft, but he received a brush-off. It seems that the Pope didn't like him much either.
Hugh's behaviour, his avarice and massive influence over the king, helped to spark the March of Lords Revolt, and it's said that in 1321 Llantrisant Castle was badly damaged in what came to be known as the Despenser War.
A brief peace followed. Then, in 1326, Edward's French Queen Isabella visited her father, the King of France, to negotiate a treaty. Instead, she came back with an army to overthrow her husband, and she succeeded. Isabella was another who hated Hugh le Despenser, and her forces hunted and captured him. After a trial, he was killed in as gory a manner as he had inflicted on Llywelyn Bren. It's also said that King Edward, captured nearby, was imprisoned in Llantrisant Castle overnight. Then he was taken away, eventually to meet his own grisly end in Berkeley Castle. Over the years, a town grew up around the castle. Famously, Llantrisant longbowmen were employed to devastating effect against the French at the 1346 Battle of Crecy during the 100 Years' War. When Owen Glyndwr's famous revolt broke out in 1400, there was much destruction of English-owned castles and property. It's said they damaged this castle too. By the mid-1500s, the castle was largely in ruin, although a part of it, known as the Raven Tower, or Tŵr Gigfran, was still standing and in use as a prison. So during the Civil War of the 1600s, when Cromwell's men destroyed anything that could be of military use to royalists, it's assumed that there wasn't much left to damage here. Over the years, local people found a handy source of building materials on their doorsteps. More of the castle was dismantled, its stones were recycled into the fabric of nearby houses, walls and roadways. Just a short walk away from the castle is the landmark called the Billy Wint. It's a very old tower that was restored in Victorian times. What it was for, we can't be absolutely certain, but the most likely purpose is that it was a lookout tower for the castle, having splendid views over the Ely Valley below.
The walls and towers of Llantrisant Castle have all but gone now, but the people who are connected to this place and the dramatic events that occurred here will always be a part of Welsh history.